Putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing up my tail.
Welcome to Hatcast,
the podcast about hats.
I'm Charles Berman.
And I'm Carl Bernhardson.
And we, as always, or only whenever we record the program, but we, as last time, are here to talk about hats.
Right, we aren't always talking about hats. That would get...
No.
People wouldn't like us very much.
Sometimes we're asleep or doing other things.
Right, working, talking about other things.
That, yes, it has been known to occur. But right now we're here to talk about hats. We may be pulled into discussion on other matters, but for the moment we're here to talk about hats.
Yes, well, hats and things that are related to hats.
That's right, yes.
Last week we revealed to you the plan, which was to do an episode about a story about hats.
That's right. Now, I hope you all read it. It's called The Amazing Hat Mystery by P.G. Wodehouse. Before we get to the story, though, we should get to our correspondence.
Yes, correspondence, and then hats that we've worn, and then we'll get to the story.
Yes. So we have an answer from our correspondent of last week, Scott.
Oh, wonderful.
And he said, and this is really quite thrilling. He said, "Gentlemen, I hope this email finds you well." It does. "Imagine my excitement when I opened my podcast player, Stitcher, to find that your latest episode has dropped. The pith helmet. Ah, this is a subject of which I can speak. Enclosed, please find a recent photograph of myself, as I am a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service, wearing one of my pith helmets."
I cannot express how exciting that is.
I know. Carry on, good sirs, and spread the message. No bad hats. Yours, Scott R. Leslie. Carl is grinning at the idea of this.
I cannot contain... And here it is.
Yes. There it is. I thought it was a fantastic coincidence that the week that we were discussing, after we received his letter, we were discussing pith helmets, and I mentioned one of my main associations was with the bringers of mail.
Right, which I hadn't been as aware of.
But it turns out Scott is one. He wears the pith helmet, and here's an image of him wearing it very well, I must say. That's a fine... I like the shape of that pith helmet. It's broad, but not too broad.
Yeah, it seems perfectly suited for the work.
And if you think about it, they have to be outside for long stretches, often in very hot weather.
Yes.
Pith helmet is perfect.
Yeah, and it's a bright white, too.
Yes.
Sort of reminds you of...
summer color.
Summer color, or, I don't know if you've seen the movie Zulu.
I haven't.
Okay. It's they actually had a sort of anachronistic issue in costuming where they had all the helmets a very bright white, which is what they were issued, but they
wouldn't have remained that way.
They didn't remain that way, no. And in fact, people would stain them different colors depending on where they were located. But yeah.
Scott's is very bright white, which I think is very becoming. So listeners out there, if you have other letters for us, or if you want to, like Scott, send a picture of yourself wearing some variety of hat or other, please feel free to do so. Those are quite welcome. The email address is hatcast@yandex.com, HATCAST@YINDEX.com.
This has been very exciting, having correspondence with a listener. I hope that other people write in.
Please do.
Well, so on to the next, right?
The hat of the day.
Yes, hat of the day. The hat that I wore.
Hat you wore
yes,
on the day that we're
day.
recording this episode.
Yes, and I've been wearing this hat since the weekend. I got it as a birthday present from a coworker.
That's a very nice present.
Yeah. One of my interests is sailing. It's not a hat,
yes,
but it's an activity.
It's an interest, yes.
Yeah. And I have a little sailboat and everything.
I'm glad that we clarified that for the listeners that sailing is not a hat.
No.
But rather a gerund. And although a sailor's hat is a kind of hat that we could discuss in the future.
Is. We'll have to do that at some point.
Yes.
So I like sailing. I have a little sailboat. But I got this hat, which is great because it has a pretty long brim. It looks like a baseball cap. It's made out of...
It's a similar shape, but it is not quite a baseball cap.
No.
Clearly, yeah.
It's made out of a very, very thin material. I think it's nylon.
It feels that way.
Yeah, it's very, very lightweight. So
this
good in warm weather.
Good in the weather, yes.
Yes, it has a pretty sturdy elastic strap at the back.
And in the wind, I imagine.
Yes. And one of the cool features about it,
the brim is pre-creased in two sections.
It folds up and fits
into
right
in your
pocket. So if the wind really picks up and you're at risk of losing your hat.
Easily stored. That is an excellent practical hat.
And you know what? It fulfilled its purpose. It kept the sun out of my eyes. I'm not sunburnt on my nose and forehead. And I still have the hat. So the wind picked up. I got hit in the face with one of the sails. My glasses flew into the water, but I was able to snag my hat and throw it in my pocket.
Fantastic.
So, without destroying the hat or anything. So, lost my glasses. That's...
that is unfortunate.
Less than ideal.
I noticed you were wearing different ones. Yeah.
Yeah, these are my old glasses.
I thought that was done for a change of style. I hadn't mentioned it yet, but I'm sorry to hear the reason for that.
Oh, no, it's all right. I was having fun. And then sailing with really limited vision is its own kind of exciting.
I don't know if I would want to do that. I have really limited vision without my glass, more than yours, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, well.
Although you do have to... The trouble is with a sailboat, you have to see... 20 feet up in the air, what's going on there, and I just couldn't do it.
That's dangerous sounding.
Yeah. No, well, I was there with my dad.
Well, that is a help. Then he
helps.
Retained his vision.
Yes, he has very, very good eyesight. So that's the hat that I wore. Did you wear a hat today,
I did.
Charles?
It's to your left.
Here it is. Oh.
And this is not an unusual looking hat, but it's a pretty uncommon hat. It's a limited edition, I should say. I'm a Phillies baseball fan.
Yes.
And I pulled this out to go to the Phillies baseball game in Philadelphia, which I went to this past Sunday and enjoyed a great deal. Although they lost the game I was at, I still enjoyed the experience of it. And this was issued, it says playoffs, and it has the Phillies logo 2010. They reached the playoffs in 2010 and sadly were eliminated, but this is a special hat commemorating their presence there.
Oh, very exciting.
Which I bought when I was pleased that they'd made it.
Have they made it since?
They made it in 2011.
Right, but you wouldn't have been able to get a 2010 hat in 2011.
Well, they might have still had them around, and maybe you can get one of these on eBay.
Right,
but it's not still made, and it's a normal looking baseball hat, except that the front is sort of, and the first two panels are a lighter shade of blue than the back, and it has a sort of a patch on the brim with a baseball emblem on it.
Huh.
So I like the look of it. It's a different color. It's a blue overall.
Right.
And then the Phillies are usually red, but I like the look of it, and I like the limited nature of it, and the commemoration of my team doing well, which they don't every year, but they are doing well so far this year. So maybe I will be able to get a Phillies Playoffs 2018 hat. I'm hoping that there will be the existence of such a thing in the future.
I hope that for you.
But I'm glad there was such a thing in 2010.
Yes.
I was around to watch it.
I can just imagine myself looking at a baseball game on the television and rooting for it just specifically so that you can get that hat.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I hope our listeners do too.
Yes.
Now let's discuss the topic of the episode.
It's a short story.
Yes.
By P.G. Wodehouse.
Right, and we were saying before, and we should clarify for our listeners, his name is not Wodehouse, although it looks like Wodehouse. Sir Pelham Grenville Wodehouse, 1881 to 1975, lived a long life and continued publishing
for a lot of it,
novels and short stories into his 90s.
Yep.
And a brilliant writer, a wonderful comic, and even just artistic fashioner of prose, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, no, his stories about the Drones Club are very amusing. I love the Blandings.
Blandings Castle, yes.
Yes.
Lord Elmsworth and Beach and Freddie Threepwood. They're lovely. And I think another writer that we both admire, Evelyn Waugh, said that Blandings Castle is the Eden from which we have all been expelled. And of course, he's probably best known for writing Jeeves and Wooster.
Right.
Narrated by Bertie Wooster. About the adventures of himself and his valet, Reginald Jeeves.
Adapted for television
with
Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry, that's right. And he also wrote stories in a series which are uncommonly read, I guess, but I like them too, about Stanley Fanshawe Eucridge.
I don't know anything about Eucridge.
Oh, I recommend Eucridge. I'll leave it at that, because we're going far afield. But Wodehouse wrote this story, The Amazing Hat Mystery, which appeared in the United States in Cosmopolitan magazine in 1933. I think this is before Cosmopolitan was a women's advice and fashion magazine.
Okay.
When it published things like P.G. Wodehouse short stories. And in the Strand magazine, best known, I think, for its Sherlock Holmes publishing. Sherlock Holmes, of course, being mentioned in The Amazing Hat Mystery.
Yes. Yeah. And specifically for his hat.
Yeah. And it appeared in his 1936 collection, Young Men in Spats.
Right.
So we are going to be spoiling some things if you haven't read this.
Right. It's now, the plot itself kind of reveals itself within the first page.
Yes.
Like, you can guess what's going to happen. It's really all in how it's described by the characters.
And you said before we recorded that this was...
It's an incredibly stupid plot.
But I think deliberately.
Yeah.
And it's actually, now if you read Wodehouse's novels, I think he deliberately makes his plots extremely complicated, but yet very easy to follow and not.
Yes.
And I think that he's almost doing the opposite here, making the plot extremely simple as a gag.
Yep.
It reminds me of what they often say about Laurel and Hardy, to harken back to two of my other favorites from film rather than writing. But they often describe Laurel and Hardy as telegraphing the gag.
Right.
So if you look at their famous film Big Business, I'm not sure if you've seen it.
I haven't, no.
The premise of the film is Laurel and Hardy are selling Christmas trees. They knock on a door and get, through a series of misunderstandings, get into a feud with a man living in a house to whom they're trying to sell a Christmas tree. And the whole 20-minute film, a two-reeler, as of course is mentioned also in The Amazing Hat Mystery, a two-reel comedy in which Stan Laurel wears an undersized hat. That might have been what
I'm pretty sure that's why that was
thinking of. Yes, they're not wearing top hats, but I think he might have specifically been thinking of Laurel and Hardy because 1933 they were in sort of the pinnacle of their time, but they very deliberately destroy each other's things. Laurel and Hardy very deliberately destroy James Finlayson's house, and he very deliberately destroys to the rivet Laurel and Hardy's car. And you know exactly how it's going to work out, and as soon as they start doing something, you know exactly how the gag is going to proceed, but the humor and the cleverness is in how they do it.
Right.
Which I think is what happens in this story.
Yes. Because essentially this story is two men go to get hats.
Yes.
They get mixed up by the delivery boys, and
the men don't realize it.
Right. Well, and the thing is, the hats are from a prestigious hat maker, and so
the fictional one. Yeah.
Right. They
cannot conceive.
Right. They will not accept that these hats could possibly be misfit.
Yes.
Even though that they are comically small or large for their heads.
Yes.
And then they get into fights about
Hence the title, The Amazing Hat Mystery. Yeah. There is, in fact, to the reader, no mystery.
No mystery at all.
It is very clear what happened. And so this really becomes, through the non-mystery nature of this mystery, what I would call dramatic irony situation. In a humorous fashion.
And it's, probably the funniest turn of events was so it starts off with how excited they are to get these hats because they're going to impress two women with their hats. And they are so certain that these hats will impress the women that they're trying to woo. And it's sort of funny to me because the idea that a top hat, an article of men's clothing, is going to be impressive to someone you're trying to, encourage to be romantically involved with you is sort of silly, right?
Yes, it is.
It's like it's funny. I also collect watches and things like that.
I was going to bring up this anecdote you told me. Yes,
and sometimes on watch forums and things, someone will ask a question like, "Well, what watch do I wear if I want to impress, a woman? Well, like what sort of watch?" It's like, well,
first of all, which woman do you mean?
Yes, and secondly, why do you expect someone to be...
Yeah, a woman who's not otherwise interested in you is not going to spot your wrist and then swoon because you have worn the correct watch.
Right. And what's more, why would somebody know about an article of clothing that they would not wear? Like, they're not interested in men's watches because that's not
and I'm sure she'll be able to tell a good-looking watch from a bad-looking watch.
Right. But the fact that you've...
Her opinion might differ from yours, of course. But...
Right. But it was funny to see that same sort of attitude mirrored...
in this story.
90 years ago in this story.
So, of course, and I think it bears mentioning to our listeners, there are good-looking hats and bad-looking hats. You'll look better in a good-looking hat. But there is no magic hat that is going to get you the girl, get you the boy, get you the job, or do anything particular for you. It's...
No, and it's funny how universal that is, and how people have just continued to notice other people having this weird belief. So the story, I mean, it becomes them offending the people that they're trying to impress, just because they're insisting that a dramatically misfit hat is right. So they're just being stubborn and saying, like, no, this hat clearly fits, even though it's over their ears or just sort of perched precariously on top of a very large head.
Yes. Now there had been, I don't think there are many companies in the UK that advertise bespoke hats to the royal family, just bespoke goods to the royal family.
Right, and that's a point that they make. That
yeah.
Should the king come in here, he would say, "We would like a hat," and he would expect it to fit.
Yes, there are really. You can, of course, get I think marmalade that is marmalade provided to the royal family. They'll advertise it on the marmalade. It doesn't mean that is the only good marmalade out there.
Right.
Part of the humor is their absurd devotion to this milliner, and part of it, of course, is the exaggerated degree to which the two women in which they're interested place great stock in their in the hat of the man who is suiting.
Right. Well, that's what was funniest to me, was in the end, the hat really did mean everything to them, and they were deeply upset by the fact that it didn't fit. And then when they finally encounter somebody with a good hat that fits right, they're just completely head over heels in love.
Which is, of course, a source of humor for Wodehouse, but I think...
Right. It is meant to be funny.
If you've read a good amount of his stories, I think he is, in general, interested in hats.
He is, yeah. He talks a lot about hats.
He mentions hats quite frequently.
Even in this story about hats, he's talking about other people's hats. And referencing hats.
But I read not too long ago one called Damsel in Distress, where a turning point of the plot is around one man's top hat being knocked off in the street, and how intensely devoted to that top hat he was, and how upset he is at that. I recommend that one too, Damsel in Distress. And if we're looking at pictures now of P.G. Wodehouse, and there are a large number of him enjoying
a hat,
different styles of hats.
Yeah,
here he is on a boat with a pretty broad-brimmed. I guess you would say that's a fedora.
Yeah, I think it's a fedora.
Here he is with a very, very wide, sort of floppy flat cap.
A very, very floppy flat cap.
Yes.
The kind you would typically associate with golfing in the 1930s.
Well, he loved to write about golf.
He did.
Here he is with, what would you call that? I suppose
is it a Homburg?
It's not quite a Homburg, because it's got a dented crown.
It's dented, yeah.
Somewhere between a Homburg and a Trilby.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. There are breeds of hats that have gone out.
Well, I haven't seen a hat like that in the wild, really, but I would wear it if I had one. But it's not an outre-looking hat.
No.
I've seen interviews with him in some nice checked flat caps. He was a hat connoisseur, and it comes through. Here he is in an enormous checked flat cap. That's from that interview that I saw. That's from when he's very old.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he lived into the 1970s.
Yes,
because you so firmly imagine his work as being set in the 30s and 40s.
Yes,
but he did keep writing up until then. Although he kept setting things in an earlier time period.
Here he is in another golf hat. Yeah, he didn't really make many concessions to the war.
No,
or the other war.
Right. Yeah,
he let things be frozen in time, because the war isn't really very pleasant to think about. It's a war.
No, and when you write kind of silly, humorous short stories, you don't really want to get too in the weeds about the war.
I forget who it was, but there was some critic who loved P.G. Wodehouse, but said that one of his biggest mistakes was in the 1960s having, and I haven't read the book that he's referring to, so I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Bertie Wooster. Walk past a demonstration of anti-nuclear bomb protesters. And he said that just takes you out of the world.
Right.
Because it's really a world without current events.
Right. Well, and that's funny to think of Worcester in the 1960s is kind of a strange thing.
Right, or Lord Elmsworth, because those castles were all nationalized.
Right. Yeah, people didn't own those and live in them anymore.
Right. But so there's something very idyllic about it.
Yes.
Which is also part of the pleasantness of reading. Quite apart from just how beautifully constructed the writing is.
Yes. Well, like we were just saying, this story, which is essentially about nothing.
It's a bravura piece.
Yes.
It is deliberately about nothing. Part of the mockery is how nothing it is, and we laugh at the characters and at the writer in deliberately pretending that there's a mystery for the hat to be about.
And then at the very end, this story is being related to somebody else who wasn't involved, and a third party remarks, "Well, I think they just mixed the hats up."
Right. Yes.
And they're like, "No, it couldn't be. That's not an adequate solution to this mystery." But
we should mention also they were about to go to Ascot.
Right.
In the hat, which is worth glossing because that is well known as, if anywhere you show off a hat, it is at Ascot.
Yes, that's true, and it was very important to them
to wear the right hat.
Right
there, yeah. There is the scene in the hat check room.
Yes, which is a sort of a dinosaur now, right? We don't really get those.
There are still cloak rooms and check rooms,
but not specifically,
not just for hats. Yes, and that is where the hats are reunited with their original.
Right. You get the impression that the hat check counter worker figures out that they've given them the wrong hats.
And there is something wonderful about Dodson's because they are bespoke hats. The king bespeaks the hat.
Yes.
Which is Wodehouse being humorously archaic in his usage of bespeak. But
there's a lot of humorous archaic terms in Wodehouse's stories.
Yes, I think of Bertie Wooster saying this had better be done eftsoons. Which, if he's really as what would you say, as spacey as Bertram Wooster is, I don't know, would he be saying eftsoons? Well, it doesn't matter. It's just lovely. But Dodson's in this story is a place where you go, and as I forget which of the women was talking to which of the men at this point.
Right.
But it's a place where you go and you don't say, I wear a 7 3/8.
Right.
You get your head measured.
Right, and then they make you
a hat. They make a hat exactly to your size.
Right.
And that I have not seen around lately.
No.
I don't know if I've ever seen that.
That would be, I'm sure there are places that do that continue to exist. I also imagine they are well beyond my budget.
Yes. Or anyone who isn't bespeaking podcast episodes rather than simply taking the subjects that we give them. If you would like to bespeak an episode,
you can
please write to us. Yes. But that is why it's not just only trust in Dodson's. That is why they cannot conceive the hat would not fit. They have been measured for the hat. They're bespoke hats.
Right. They went through this whole process. And yeah, I guess it's harder for them to believe that the entire world has gone wrong.
Yes.
Right? Than that someone is just mocking them.
Right. I mean, I think one of the unbelievable parts of the story is that they would not notice when putting hats onto their heads.
That you wouldn't feel it sort of, or that it wouldn't even, it's repeatedly said that it's covering his eyes.
Yes, which would cause a difficulty in seeing, yeah. It's pointed out that this is, unlike other Drones Club stories, does not feature the normal Drones Club fellows.
No, these are two sort of random characters being discussed by another.
He fits it into his Drones Club stories.
Yeah.
Wikipedia tells us that along with the other Drones Club story, Uncle Fred Flits By, this story was based on ideas given to Wodehouse by his friend Bill Townsend. I'm not sure how involved an idea it could have been based on. It's a very simple idea, and the execution is really the thing.
What was his first name again?
Bill?
No, the PG Wodehouse. What does the PG stand for?
Oh, Pelham Grenville.
Yeah, I can sort of see the conversation. Pelham, I was thinking, you like stories, right? I was thinking maybe you got two guys. One's really big, a big guy, right? Big guy, tall,
right,
big head. The other's really little head. And they mix their hats up. Wouldn't that be funny?
I could see him.
Write that one down. You can use that.
I could see this happening. I could see his friend giving him a terribly stupid and simple idea for a story. And P.G. Wodehouse, being the master that he was, saying, all right, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it work. Yeah. And then turning out something that is really quite brilliant. It is a perfect little gem of a story.
It really is. For what, something only 20 pages long?
Yeah. It says here also this was adapted as a radio drama by the BBC Radio on 25th of April, 1962. I haven't heard that, but I imagine that would be amusing.
I would think so. I mean, it reads pretty easily. We just read it aloud here to refresh ourselves. So
yeah. So yes, I overall, we've sort of given it away, but really we haven't, because knowing what happens is what you know what happens in the beginning.
Yes.
And then the execution is the value.
Yes.
So even if you haven't read it, but you listened through to this episode, I strongly recommend.
Oh, it's pretty joyful.
Yes. There was a reference to the nap.
Yes, the nap of the...
That's right. They were worried that the nap would be ruined.
Yes, because the two errand boys who dropped the hats off and caused the whole trouble with the mix-up were playing with the hats.
Right.
And they were terrified that the nap of the hat had been mixed up. So this was definitely not a wide awake hat.
No, this had a nap.
A very sleepy hat.
Reference, yeah.
And you know what? They talked a while about. He spent like an hour or two polishing it in some way or brushing it.
Yes.
There must. I'm not sure about how you care for a
very high quality bespoke silk top hat, because I don't have such a hat. But please write in. I think it's really also sort of an homage to something that I love, which is 1930s and 20s two reel comedies.
Yes.
Which was the milieu of Laurel and Hardy, also Charlie Chase and Harry Langdon, and well, they mention Charlie Chaplin by name.
They do. Yeah, that was. Yeah, they mentioned Charlie Chaplin by name.
Also known for his bowler hat.
Yes.
The famous wearer, yeah.
But yeah, they definitely reference Laurel and Hardy specifically because of the poorly fitting hats. And then at some point, what was it? There was the Sherlock Holmes reference in reference to his deerstalker.
Yes.
Oh, they were having.
She dropped the jar on his uncle who was
yep.
wearing a deerstalker.
Yeah. Right, the deerstalker was a completely superfluous detail.
He
just happened to be
mention
wearing
another hat. Yeah. So P.G. Wodehouse was really a man after our own heart. We consider him a posthumous friend. He's been dead since 1975, sadly, but we consider him a friend of Hatcast, even in his decease.
Yes.
Well, and that was the amazing hat mystery. Let's rate this on style and practicality.
Oh, wonderful. The idea of rating a story on practicality is pretty fun.
Let's see. Well, for style, I would have to give it a 10 for prose style.
I'll give it a 9.5. Yeah, I'm hesitant to call anything perfect in prose. Yeah.
10 is within the top range. Nothing was ever perfect, of course.
Yeah.
For practicality?
What was practical? It caused me to chuckle.
Yes, which is its goal.
It was a useful thing to talk about.
It provided something to read.
Yep, it was good to read. It let us have a topic for our podcast about hats.
Yes.
Not Wodehouse's intention, but we were able to, drag that practicality out of it.
He intended to provide reading material,
right.
Which he did at the exact length that he intended.
Yep.
It is, of course, a portion of a complete book of collected stories, Young Men in Spats. I read the whole book. Did you read the whole book?
I didn't read the whole book.
I recommend all the stories in the book. It includes the introduction of Uncle Fred.
Oh, this is where he comes from.
Yes, yeah.
Huh.
So I would give it I guess suppose a 9 on practicality.
Yeah, I'll give it a 9 on
You
practicality.
can't do much physical with it, I suppose.
True. And we had it in electronic form, so
yes,
it's completely without anything physical. So, and even if it was printed out, it's pretty short, so it would you couldn't use it to hold things down. I guess it could be a coaster.
It's a 9.375, a very good score.
Very good score.
Yeah.
Although you couldn't wear it as a hat.
No, you couldn't. You could put the book on your head.
Right.
But that is not a hat.
No, it is not a hat. And actually, that's a good segue into what we'll probably be talking about next week.
That's right.
Which is whether or not something is a hat. We've talked for a while about doing that. We've got 2 kind of oddball episodes.
Yeah, but we hope you enjoy them.
Yeah, we're gonna play with the form a little bit.
All right.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Oh, what would I do without you, Jeeves? I get in the most frightful stew, Jeeves. The day wouldn't start without you to wake me, respectfully shake me, and offer that perfect cup of tea. You make me, who in the world would I call in to winkle me out when I fall in? Those terrible traps that destiny weaves and all that sort of rot. What would I do without